This conference will now be recorded.
Ready? All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Significant user agreement.
You have before you 3 significant industrial user agreements. My office recommends in the affirmative. I will start with an executive summary of this entire process, which has elapsed about 2 years. Mayor and council, the start of my tenure with the city of Appleton had my office positioned directly between the city clerk treasurer's office and an industrial water and sewer user. The working relationship between the parties had collapsed due to disagreements over outstanding penalties and questions of process failure. Another contributing factor to the long-standing operational impasse that my office was charged with mitigating was the involvement of a third-party sewer maintenance service provider, which inadvertently inflamed the situation. The Appleton City Council was struggling to find a manner of addressing the situation and did not possess the capacity to achieve resolution. The Appleton City Council was not able to develop capacity due to not being provided with timely or accurate information about the city's operations as they pertain to finances, billing procedures, or transactions within the City of Appleton's water and sewer enterprise funds, which at that point were in a state of historic deficit. The City Council took steps to address this and all matters adversely affecting the City of Appleton's operations. The Office of the City Administrator was created, and with respect to this matter, the third-party sewer maintenance contract was allowed to expire, saving the City of Appleton $180,000 annually. My office approached this situation in a structural and systematic manner by reviewing the City of Appleton's significant industrial user agreements. When a community has industrial partners that rely on access to public utilities, it is typical for the community to establish how industrial users will access said utilities with an SIU agreement, significant industrial user agreement. An SIU agreement is a governing document that regulates how industrial users access public utilities. An SIU agreement must adhere to state agency regulations. In the state of Minnesota, that is the Pollution Control Agency, MPCA. The SIU agreement is regulated by the MMPCA, which are prescribed by guidelines at the federal level by the rulemaking authority of the Environmental Protection Agency pursuant to Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 403(8). In the case of the City of Appleton, there are 3 industrial partners: Just Inc., Christensen Farms, and Core Civic. My office found that the existing SIU agreement was appropriately structured and provided for all necessary oversight levers needed to protect the community's interests, which included protecting utility infrastructure, appropriately assessing penalties to deter abuse, and protecting the environment. The existing SIU agreement was written by subject matter experts in the field of wastewater and water engineering. The manner in which the SIU agreement was written did not seem to consider the end user's experience with administration of SIU agreements. The readership of the existing SIU agreement suggests a presumption of significant experience with contractual administration and analysis from the end user. The end user of the SIU agreement would be required to possess significant background in statistics, mathematics, contract administration, proficiency with wastewater and water operations, as well as mastery with respects to municipal administration. The City of Appleton did not have the staff resources to properly administer an SIU agreement of this scale as a matter of structure. The majority of the disagreement that existed between the office of the city clerk treasurer and the city's industrial partners had to do with the interpretation of the SIU agreement. Both city staff and industrial users struggled to interpret and understand the prescriptions that govern how the city provided oversight for the local industrial partner. The SIU agreement controls all aspects of how the industrial utility user are provided notice, assess penalties, assess infrastructure charges, are monitored for appropriate levels of pollutant criteria, are monitored for appropriate effluent flows and pH levels, etc. Given the complexities listed herein, when you consider that the city staff was composed of not more than 2 full-time employees during the period in question, it is no wonder that mistakes occurred with regards to administering the current SIU agreement. It is important to note that the city is charged with much more than administering an SIU agreement. The city staff is also responsible to stakeholders for all other municipal services. Unfortunately, the city staff over the course of many billing cycles failed to bill industrial users in a manner prescribed by the SIU agreement, and in some instances failed to process bills at all. Given the capacity requirements for administering the SIU agreement, the calculations of greater than domestic wastewater effluents or surcharges were vastly inaccurate. Surcharge calculations were formally performed by the Office of the City Clerk Treasurer alone. Given my findings, my office instructed all staff as to the proper calculations of surcharges. All calculations are now verified by the City Clerk Treasurer, City Accounting Officer, and the final approval is performed by the Office of the City Administrator, my office, prior to providing notice of surcharge assessments to industrial users. My office took care early on to assist the city staff with compiling all outstanding charges and submitted a request to the City Council for collections of balances due. The City Council resolved to collect only a portion of the assessments due. It found that penalties and surcharges from billing cycles too far in the past were not equitable and a poor business practice. Despite the weighted significance of a significant industrial user agreement, it is important to note that the document and its oversight utility rests within a very regulated municipal arena. As mentioned herein, the City of Appleton's enterprise funds for sewer and water were in a chronic state of deficit during the period in question. User rates had not been significantly increased to keep pace with increased costs of operations, debt service, and capital purchases. Furthermore, the City of Appleton's utility rate structure did not delineate between user types, which meant that despite low user rates, the burden of operating utility enterprise funds was squarely on the shoulder of residents. The City Council did not have capacity or access to salient information for addressing these issues and could not reasonably take action to make changes until the Office of City Administrator was created. The City Council now has a manner to budget revenues from all sewer and water user types. This means that the City Council is now able to estimate user rate revenues not only for typical industrial bills, but also for surcharges collected from industrial users. This is a benefit for the community because properly functioning enterprise funds mean that operations, maintenance, debt service charges, and capital costs for the sewer and water funds do not get allocated to the tax levy. In repairing the relationship between the City of Appleton and its industrial partners, it became evident that the SIU agreement required improvements so that the document can be operationalized and understood by end users of any readership. There were other significant actions that my office had to coordinate in order to improve relationships with the city's industrial partners. The sale of Del D Foods to Just Inc. was delayed by land use issues that the city should have rectified for 8 parcels of land when the zoning ordinances were changed. My office was able to correct said issues, facilitating the sale that allowed for Del D Foods to be purchased by Just, which now employs 50 people at the plant here in Appleton. The City of Appleton's show of good faith contributed to the industrial partners' willingness to sit down and work through historic issues that they observed and experiences with the City of Appleton's administration of the existing SIU agreement. My office sought authorization from the City Council to contract a neutral wastewater and water engineering firm, Probst Engineering, to assist the city in this endeavor. Probst was hired to analyze the language of the existing SIU agreement and make it approachable to all readerships. This process also included assisting the city in properly assessing and capturing the concerns of all industrial users, as well as preserving the city's ability to protect wastewater and water infrastructure and the environment. This process began in early 2020, but with the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, all parties experienced delays. Before you are 3 SIU agreements, which are all structured similarly as it pertains to matters of billing procedures, notice requirements, compliance determinations, definitions for terminology, and references to controlling laws, authorities, and industry standards. The SIU agreements are different with respect to their allocation limits for daily maximums, monthly average, averages, chloride limitations, and peak instantaneous flows. Please see attachment A for all of the SIU agreements. These differences are due to varying types of local industrial users found within the city of Appleton. Some are food processing, some are washing stations, and others are the core civic. Right now, they don't have high populations, but they're a very different business than the other two mentioned. My office is proud to recommend that the Appleton City Council approve all three of the SIU agreements presented. These documents are the culmination of many hours of dedication by parties interested in the success of our community. Our work is made possible thanks to the contributions of individuals like the City of Appleton's contracted wastewater operators, Mr. Jim Nelson and Mr. Brent Powers, the junior wastewater operator, Mr. Brady Warren, members of the street department such as Mr. Ryan Anderson and Mr. Brian Knudsen, the city clerk treasurer, Ms. Emma Haugen, the city accounting officer, Ms. Liz Goddess, the office of the city attorney with both Ms. Olson and Ms. Nelson, Probes Engineering, and our industrial partners, which have traveled from as near as Tennessee and as far as California to work with our city in good faith to produce an SIU agreement that protects our community's interests. Respectfully submitted, Willie Morales.
All right. Thank you, Willie. So moving forward, do we need to go through each project on the deal for what each one is, or do we need people with questions, or?
If you have any questions, I'm happy to go through anything you would like to review.
If I understand it now that all three of the industrial users have agreed to this and they're happy with the outcome.
I wouldn't say happy because this is a rule book, right? This is telling us how we are to protect our community from their potential misuse. But are they in alignment that this is a balanced document? Yes. And their legal teams are as well.
And all parties have had a chance to express at least their concerns.
Yep, we have been meeting since 2020.
Yeah, in a lot of the meetings, the stipulations, they didn't understand. They thought it was something that we were trying to regulate, but we had to convey to them, this is what the state of Minnesota is telling you, you have to do. And if we don't control it ourselves, they will come in and do it. So it was to the best interest of all the industrial users to get this SIU agreement done with us versus having, other political parties in here mitigating and doing that. So
Why I applaud the process and the time that all parties have put into it.
We had some difficult conversations. But I have to say, every single party worked in good faith. And it wasn't easy because agreement is not something that happens. Agreement is a process. And the state threw in a little bit of a wrench. They want us to monitor chlorides, which is new. Phosphorus is also new. So in the coming years, I will work to get you guys pre-treatment phosphorus, which there's granting out there for. But as far as this governing document, the SIU agreement or significant industrial user agreement is a culmination of a very intense, long process.
Just one more comment, and that is the simplicity of these agreements compared to the past. And now, instead of it being so hard for people not familiar with the process to figure out the formula, it's much easier to figure out the formulas.
I want it to be clear, my staff is composed of professional people with significant background. With that being said, for them to read the current significant industrial user agreement, you need to have a master's in significant statistics and law to understand this document. This document before you today is an improvement. Anybody can sit down and you read it quietly for an hour or two, you will understand what it's saying. And that was the objective. Thank you.
see, that was the trouble in the past, all that stuff we had, the companies calculated it different than the city was calculating, and everybody could take the same paper and come up with a different number. That's what you're trying to do, is simplify that so that everybody can calculate and come up with the same number, correct?
Correct. What would you say, Emma, since late 2019, with the amount of volume that we put on our city's website, a good portion of it was regarding to the SIU agreement and billing and things of that nature. The city council, you have the staff that can guide you through this, but you yourselves can read this document and understand it.
I mean, this is where we need to talk about. Does anybody have any questions on that attachment A? I mean, with the way the pHs, and I mean, everything's worked out between each company. If there's any issues, now's the time to bring it up.
I can identify some of the issues. So not issues, but differences. If you look at attachment A for Just Eat Proteins, you notice under their min max within that data box on the top right-hand corner, 200 GPM, that's 200 gallons per minute max. And that is a reference to the instantaneous volume of water that they can submit to the lift station that serves them and the community. The importance of this is that if you have too much volume in there, you're overloading it and you're consuming the useful life of that infrastructure piece before it's time. Recently, Just paid for an increase to those pumps, and also they are submitting themselves to these guidelines. In addition, you'll see that their chloride levels are a little bit higher than Christensen Farms and also Core Civic. That's because their process effluent levels require some more chlorides than the others. But in consultation with the state said that it would be appropriate for us to raise it to 600 milligrams per liter. So we are within guidelines there.
You know, it was a real plus with Justin. We met with him in all those meetings and we came up with an agreement and we said we'd let them try it for a week or what was it, a month. And they said, I mean, they made the agreement that if we overload your lift station one time, we will pay for the pumps. And it went a few days and they overloaded it and it wasn't even a question. They just said, you order the pumps you need and you send us the bill and we'll pay it. So, I mean, they're great people to work with. And that's why we're trying to do everything right here so it stays that way in the future and we don't cause any issues for them in the future.
And it's important to note all of our industrial users and partners are in compliance with the current existing SIU, which is difficult to navigate, but they are in compliance. And this SIU that you guys will be voting on today will be that much easier to navigate, making compliance that much easier for the end user. No. So one of the items that my office was sure to put in there is that any changes to operations and any of industrial users' operations has to be reported to the city. Before, that wasn't the case. And of course, their operations are protected by intellectual property laws. So we don't have access to their operations, but it does state that they are to let us know.
And they're very good too. They put the monitoring in. I mean, so our guys can just stop by there anytime, walk into a building and get a reading of what their outputs and everything are. I mean, but they just can't give us their DK, because it's a privacy thing because of what they're making. So.
And in addition, to help us track the monitoring requirements that were added in consultation with our water operators, now require that the output from the monitoring system include graphs so that we can tell precisely whether there are temperature increases, volume increases, or component particle increases. So we're able to track all of that responsibly. And that helps them too, because then they can tell if certain adjustments in their operations are worth doing or not. this SIU agreement. We have you in our heads whenever we do anything. And we hope that this captures everything that you need.
Yeah, I'd like to just thank all of you guys for the hard work on this, because there was a lot of hard meetings and some tough discussions in some of those meetings to get this done. So it's very positive, and now we should have a roadmap for the future that, I mean, everybody can follow. So I'd like to thank everybody.
Me too.
Anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none? You want something? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.